All right, here is your video on naming acids. So this is page 4 of your nomenclature playbook. Again, I apologize that this is not on my iPad. It's kind of weird. You can see that eraser down there. It's the best I got in this moment, so sorry about that. So let's say you're given a formula of an acid. So you see some letters, okay, like HBr or something like that. Okay, that means you'd want to start right here. Okay, formula to name. Okay, so there are two types of acids that you're going to have to name. The first type are ones that you need to memorize. These are the hydroic acids. Okay, and so basically what you do is you just put the name of the other substance inside of that hydroic formula. Okay, so there are 6 of these that you need to memorize for my class. The first one is called hydrobromic acid. Again, brome comes from bromine right there. The next one is one that you might be familiar with. It's called hydrochloric acid, and again, that chlor comes from this Cl right here. The next one, you could probably take a guess right now that this would be hydrofluoric acid. This one would be hydroiodic acid. The next one is hydrocyanic acid. That CN is called cyanide, so hydrocyanic acid. And then finally, H2S would be sulfuric acid. So, guys, I'm telling you right now, you need to memorize those 6 hydro acids. Anytime you see HF, you should know it is hydrofluoric acid. All right, but you aren't always going to have those 6 hydroblankic acids, okay? You might have some acids that are H with a polyatomic ion, okay? So if your polyatomic ion ends in 8, you're going to change the ending to ic and then add the word acid. So for example, if you had hydrogen plus nitrate, it would be called nitric acid. I like to tell my students and make them cringe really hard. I say, when I say you ate, you get the ick. Okay, like it's cringy that I try to say slang. So maybe that'll help you. When I say ate, you get the ick. Okay? Now, what if you have something like nitrite? Okay, so if your polyatomic ion ends in ite, you're going to change that ending to us. Okay? I think one of my classes once said, like, hey, that's ite with us or something like that to help them remember it, but yeah, I don't know. So right here it would be H plus nitrite, okay, would end up being called nitrous acid. Okay? Here is something that one of my old colleagues would tell his students. I ate icky food at the lighthouse. So ate ick, ite us. Okay? So yeah. Now, what if I'm given the name of an acid and I need to convert it to those letters, to that formula? I would go right here. So my very first step is, because it says acid, I'm going to write an H. Okay? And then depending on what type of acid it is, if it was one of those guys over here that I had to just memorize, I'm just going to write the nonmetal symbol from the acid name that's between hydro and ic. So for example, like if it was hydrofluoric acid, I would say, okay, well, this is H because it's an acid, and then fluoric tells us that it's just an F, HF, and boom, that's one that I was supposed to memorize a while ago. All right. Now, if it was one of these guys over here, okay, one of those H plus polyatomic acids, I would write the symbol for the polyatomic ion from the acid name, okay, and then I would write a subscript to the right of the H equal to the absolute value of the charge of the nonmetal or polyatomic ion. You're probably sitting here thinking, what did she just say? Let me just show you, okay? So phosphoric acid. The fact that we see the word acid tells us we need to put an H here, okay? And then we know that phosphoric comes from 8, so this is really phosphate. You should have it memorized that phosphate is PO4. And because phosphate has a 3 minus charge, we're going to crisscross that 3 down here to the bottom to become H3PO4. I'm going to give you one more example just so that you know what you're doing. So let's do this one. Sulfurous acid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first say, hey, I see the word acid. I'm going to write an H. And then I'm going to look at that us. Okay, I know that ite goes to us, so this is really sulfite. And hopefully you remember that sulfite is SO3, and it technically has a 2 minus charge. What we're going to do is we're just going to bring that 2 down to balance that out. So this becomes H2SO3. Let's do one more just to really make sure you know what you're doing. So let's say I have acetic acid. So once again, because I see the word acid, I'm going to write an H. And then ic comes from 8. When I say 8, you get the ic, okay, which means this is acetate. And again, you should have memorized that acetate is C2H3O2, and it has a 1 minus charge. Remember, all we do is we take that number right there that we technically should have had, and we instead move it over here to that H. So really this is just CH3, oh my gosh, C2H3O2 with that H in the beginning. All right, so hopefully that helps.